When Adelaide Street Circuit opened in 1985, it was hailed as the world's best temporary road course. After many successful years, when Melbourne seized the right to hold the event in 1996, political support for the event ebbed away, and the audience numbers began to fall somewhat. The idea of hosting Formula One race was first emerged in the early 1980s. F1 President Bernie Ecclestone began looking for a new city to add to the Grand Prix calendar. He planned to expand into markets outside of Europe and find an exciting street circuit. Meanwhile, businessman Bill O'Gorman put up a proposal with the support of South Australia's Premier to secure a world-class event that would have the city shed its image as a dull city compared with Melbourne or Sydney. Following a meeting in London with Bernie Ecclestone, the delegation was awarded a 7-year contract to host the Australian F1 Grand Prix. After securing the contract, the state assigned the project to a senior civil servant. Thus, several laws had to be approved to allow racing on the streets, and the venue was chosen near Victoria Park Racecourse. Engineer Bob Bernard was hired to design the circuit. However, when the concept of hosting the Grand Prix in Parkland came up, there was some criticism from people concerned about environmental damage. Nonetheless, various federal and state funding were obtained to pay the works, which included the construction of 2,142 concrete barriers, over 4 miles of wire fencing, and temporary pit facilities and grandstands. The 3.78-kilometer track had sections built in Victoria Park as well as city streets. Because of this, Adelaide Street Circuit had a fast sweeping layout. Then, on 3rd November 1985, the first F1 Australian Grand Prix was held at the Adelaide Street Circuit, which was the first F1 championship race in Australia and the final race of the 1985 F1 World Championship. The first race was won by Keke Rosberg in a Williams. As a result, the circuit hosted 11 F1 races from 1985 to 1995. During the final Formula One Grand Prix in Adelaide in 1995, the Grand Prix saw a record attendance of 520,000 spectators during the weekend, with 210,000 spectators on race day. But unfortunately, political maneuvering caused Formula One to moving to Melbourne's Albert Park in 1996. Victoria State made a secret deal with Ecclestone to take over if South Australia ever gave it up. This became more problematic during the 1993 state election, when neither the Labour nor Liberal Party were willing to guarantee contract renewal, allowing Melbourne to take control. Melbourne also appealed commercially as a bigger market for sponsors and corporate hospitality. Although some of the race's infrastructure was sold to Melbourne, Adelaide still wanted to race in some capacity. Losing Formula One was a major blow to Adelaide after building a global reputation by hosting the Australian Grand Prix. Experts estimated F1's departure reduced the local economy by more than $30 million annually. But on 1st September 1998, the South Australia's government announced the conclusion of negotiation with the Australia V8 Supercar Company, or AVESCO, for the hosting of a V8 supercar race known as Adelaide 500. The old Grand Prix circuit was shortened in 1999. Since then, the circuit is 3.2 km long and has 14 turns. But the original Grand Prix layout was restored for the special Race of 1,000 Years for American Le Mans Series sports car, which began on 31st December 2000 and finished on the first day of the new year. Over 135,000 people attended, with around 70,000 of them in attendance on race day. Adelaide has been focusing on V8 supercar since 2001. It is also one of the hardest, with the characteristic summer heat and the hectic nature of the competition put drivers' endurance to the test. Nonetheless, every accident has some major consequences at this circuit, as sadly demonstrated in 2008, when Australian driver Ashley Alan Cooper died after his car seeming to clip inside the bend before colliding with the outside wall during the Fujitsu Series race. Changes were made to the corner the following year, narrowing the entry and bringing the outside wall to improve any angle of impact at the exit. In addition, over $20 million in circuit renovation were made, including the shade for grandstand and a new pit building. However, attendance number starting to decline, and rumors began to emerge that the race's funding was in jeopardy. Moreover, the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 caused all the racing engines would have to stop for several months. Taking advantage of this, some council members proposed redevelopment plans for Victoria Park. With the election approaching and a Save the Race movement gained popularity, the opposition leader had the perfect issue to campaign against. If he won the election, he would revive the event. When the votes were counted, the opposition party won the election in 2022, and the race was back on. 18 million Australian dollars was allocated for the event revival. Since then, the Adelaide 500 event has been held every year. From its debut as the venue of the Australian Grand Prix in 1985 to its final race in 1995, the circuit offered thrilling action and unforgettable moments. Its unique combination of city streets, tight corner, and unpredictable weather made it true test of driver skill. Even though Formula One eventually moved to a new venue in Melbourne, the Adelaide Street Circuit left behind a lasting legacy on the sport in Australia.